And we're live. Awesome. Episode 50, which I'm pretty excited about because, the milestone. Of course, it's me. So I literally put out the link and did all the blast stuff probably 3 minutes ago because we were on the way home from a Boy Scout show, doing reptile shows like we always do. And I had been talking to my guest and sent her the link, and she knows how I am that we were running behind. So again, for the second time, we are broadcasting to all the different THN, LBR, and CBX spots, which is pretty cool. So it goes out to more folks. So that's fun. I am rocking the Crocodile Conservation shirt after literally just talking to folks in the THN group chat about some goober who got tagged by an alligator trying to do some nonsense. I had literally just come back from showing an alligator with Teresa to a bunch of Boy Scouts about not to do that. So that'll be fun. What's up, Jessica? Yeah, I am pretty stoked. I'm glad Erica was able to make it. I sent her the link, so she will come along as she comes along. As usual, I was running around with all the reptiles, and so that was my bad getting her the link late. But we will see how it goes. I posted in the little blurb for the show notes type of thing that NARBC is next week, so I'm pretty stoked about that. Vivtech always does cool stuff, so I can't wait to talk to them about that. And I'm going to be back in the Illinois area for the show. I probably will only be there on Sunday, but we'll see how it goes. I will likely miss the auction, which sucks because that's one of my favorite things to do. We're still trying to wait and see. Maybe Teresa will go in my place. She's not as prolific of a silent bidder as me on all the silent auction things, so we'll see how that goes. I always wander around and try to scope out artwork and books, and there's always really cool stuff at those auctions, and it goes to support USARK, which is cool. So that's always a good time. I am checking because I sent the link, so we will see what happens. And Erica literally posted 20 minutes ago on Instagram that she was cleaning tokay geckos, so we'll see if she notices her phone dinging that I am messaging her. I put in the show notes along with the NARBC note. Uh-oh. There we go. We're back. That talking about Vivtech, talking about UV, which is kind of a hot button-ish topic. I think everybody realizes that by this point. I am in the cool position of actually being friends with Erica and Ryan, and was friends with Erica and Ryan before Vivtech, so I kind of got to see probably a little more behind the scenes than most people did as it came about. And then now to see is the progression of UV and how folks are using it, how the debate is progressing with the advent of companies like Vivtech and then companies like Arcadia that have been long time players in that realm. So that's been pretty cool. And it's those ideas, the UV idea and Arcadia and Vivtech and companies that like you hear me, I guess specifically, I only can speak for myself, but like when you hear me talk about stuff like that on Lizard Brain Radio, or you hear me on Snakes and Stogies or any of the shows, 50 other podcasts that I've been on, I use that stuff. Like I'm not just making it up or randomly talking. Let's see what happens. Erica says, please hold as my Facebook has had a heart attack. So we all know how that goes, and she will come along shortly. Yeah, I actually use the stuff. I'm a proponent of it, and I talk about it on the show and talk about it with guests or when I'm a guest, whatever, because I do it. Like it's kind of the same as the black box. Like you hear us talk about it all the time, but I have them. I use them. They're cool. I like them. I see good results from them, and so that's what I end up reporting back. I bring that back to people that ask me. I am kind of stoked to talk to Erica about it because it's such a hot button topic in some, social media, online debate kind of things that you can really tell. I don't know, I guess it's very localized because companies like Vivtech, they're small, and like you can literally go ask them. And so that's one of the cool things I thought, and I was hoping to kind of um, broach that in the podcast idea of we always have the group chat. You guys always ask questions and kind of come out in force, which is cool. But I specifically mentioned NARBC because like Eric and Ryan, we all live around here. Like they go to those shows. Ryan goes to bunches and bunches of shows, but they're accessible people and are the founders and face of that company. And so I just think it's cool that like there's a debate about UV or debate about the lights or debate, I don't know about this, that, or the other thing. And there are questions and whatever. You can just go ask them. Like they're literally standing right there at NARBC or any of these other shows. And I've always thought that was cool because when you, in the same vein as the animals, when you go to a show as opposed to buying online or sometimes maybe even buying in a pet store, you can stand there and talk to a person who can tell you, oh, I hatched this out or I got these babies or what have you. And that's like always been the big pitch or the big idea of the social aspect, the interpersonal aspect, and things like that of why people like reptile shows. Okay, cool. Now this is that thing, but for equipment, for lights, or for whatever the case may be. Redline Science, when they came out with all their tongs and stuff, you could stand there and talk to them like, hey, what'd you do? Why'd you do this? Where'd you get that idea? And you can meet that person and speak to them. Venom Life Gears, the same idea. You talk to Woody about the hooks and stuff. That guy's standing right there, and that's the dude that made it. So you can just go ask him. I've always thought that was super cool. And this Vivtech in particular was doing something new and was doing something a little hot button with the whole UV thing. And then you had people online, and then they would come to people like me as well, because I'm a proponent of them. And so people would want to ask me questions and, well, why this or how that, or what do you use about this light and so on and so forth. And they're accessible. You could just go ask them, they answer their social media or in person at shows and things like that. And I've always really enjoyed that. Lance, I know I'm trying to bring her on. I got that. The professor picture. I saw that too when she sent me that. I was like, really, dude? To her credit, she did give me two choices of picture, and one was much more of a professional headshot, and the other one was the professor, and I went professor. So I did pick the professor headshot, but she is the one who sent it to me, so it's not my fault. No, I'm pretty stoked on that front. I think it's funny that she sent me that because of all the research and all the things that have gone into what they do. I don't know, that whole thing, like it's a pretty hardcore debate. And then when you read the science on it, there's not much to debate. Like it's a really interesting topic. I'm glad that they made the leap with their company when they did, and I'm glad they did it the way that they did it. And so I hope it continues to progress. I do think it's funny that she picked a photobiology book to share for her picture. That was pretty good. My phone keeps buzzing, so I assume she's fighting the good fight with the electronics. Ooh, since I am bringing Erica on, and I do have local folks that listen to this, or if you're not local and you're going to be around, the Wildlife Discovery Center in Illinois is a small zoo. Oh, I heard the beep. There she is. She exists. Hey.
I got it.
What's up? I'm plugging the Wildlife Discovery Center real quick.
Ooh, nice.
Because it's something Erica just had on her social media. The Wildlife Discovery Center is a small zoo in Illinois that is closing its doors and had a killer reptile collection. And a part of their closing is that they are moving enclosures and some different things. And a lot of the enclosures are already have their built-ins. There's a lot of equipment. There's a lot of really cool stuff. And if you are a herp history kind of nerd, especially with NARBC Tinley coming up, stuff in the Midwest, different things that people have seen over the years, as those enclosures are moved out of the zoo, private people can now own some of those enclosures and kind of be involved in that, be a little part of the story or have a piece of that. So that's something for folks to be aware of, especially if you're going to end up in our live chat or you're going to end up listening to the episode and go social media stalk one of the guests like everybody always does. If you're looking at Erica or Ryan's pages, they were both talking about it in stories and posts and things like that, helping out the Wildlife Discovery Center. So that was really cool. You're here. Hello.
And I am. Are we live? Because then I have to tell Ryan that I'm live.
You are live. Happened. I just stuck you right in. So
then I will definitely make sure I don't swear as much. But yeah, no, I just told him, he's like, I'm going to watch you live. I'm like, I'm not live for this. No, I am. Damn it.
Yep. It's all good. So speaking of that, Erica, this is a weird podcast because I feel like everybody who's going to listen to my podcast would know who you are, but there maybe, I do have quite a few overseas and international listeners, which is kind of weird, but kind of cool. So maybe they don't. Awesome. So Erica is one half of the Ryan and Erica McVeigh couple who are Vivtech. And so when she references Ryan, or if Ryan ends up in the group chat making fun of her or me, that's because we're friends and I know them and that's who she's married to. So it probably will happen at some point.
Yep.
So for the 7 people who will listen to this who don't know who you are and don't know what Vivtech is, please tell them, and then I will pepper you with questions about UV.
Ooh. So I'm Erica. Hey, I'm excited about it. I'm Erica McVeigh. I am one of the founders of Vivtech Products. So our keystone basically is our LED lights. We brought in UVB, UVA LED lights that prolong the health of your animal. And that's simply by having bulbs that last for longer than 6 months with adequate UV output. The other claim to fame for our bulbs is the fact that we have UVA. We have a huge broad spectrum UVA. A lot of other bulbs have it, but not quite to the level that we do. So that's something we were very focused on when we did it. But a lot of our other products that are coming out are based on advancing husbandry and then also trying to build up the new advancing standards of husbandry so that we're not always here. We're actually trying to raise it up a little bit more. Ryan has a better elevator pitch. That's mine because that's the important part for me.
Well, that sounds like a whole bunch of reptile nerd talk. And we already had in the group chat someone asking about bringing on the professor because that's the picture I chose that you sent me. So given that you're talking about UV and health and all this nonsense of bettering reptile care, it sounds like, and this is fun because I know all about you and we're friends and I get to
I would say this is
it sounds like you might have a background that might give you some insight into healthcare about reptiles and maybe why that's important. So what might that be?
Sorry, trying to tell my Frenchie to be silent for a little bit. So I do have a background. I have an extensive background in exotic animal medicine, which focus really heavily on reptile and amphibian and then zoo animals on top of it, because why go small, go big, as well as teeny tiny little green animals. But I have, oh my God, it's been 15 years or something like that. I don't want to do the math, Bill. Don't make me do the math. It's going to make me cry if I have to do the math. In my mind, I'm still 20. I know I'm not, but in my mind, I'm still in my 20s. But I've been doing that.
I mean, the other picture choice you sent me was very high school headshot. It was nice. It was professional, Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was one that I used for my previous job. But no, I have a lot of extensive work through exotics only animal hospitals. I have worked at zoological facilities, USDA Class C exhibits. That was probably one of the coolest things I got to do, was a lot of USDA work. And then also working with a diagnostic lab too. So I got to see the ins and outs of how animals are tested. And then we're friends with another diagnostic lab, and I lend a little bit of support to them every now and then. So there's a lot of nerd knowledge in there about like why your animal's broken. I might not be able to tell you exactly how to keep your animal, but I can tell you what to do if it's broken.
And on the vet tech side of things, you were at one time working with ARAV. Yes.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what is ARAV?
So ARAV is the Association of Reptile. It's now reptile and amphibian veterinarians. Before it was reptilian, because we're like, we're reptilian because we think we're hilarious. But it's Association of Reptile and Amphibian Veterinarians. And what that is, it's an international coming together of everybody who does veterinary medicine and loves reptiles. It doesn't necessarily mean they only see reptiles in their practice. Some of them don't even see that many reptiles in their practice. They're just
True.
passionate about, actually, your vet is one of them.
Yeah.
And you brought him into the fold through great networking and stuff. But it's people who are passionate about it, and they're passionate about the research side of it, because there's no research on reptiles and amphibians, especially when it comes to like pharmaceuticals. It's, extrapolated out from chicken and rabbit and things like that. We're like, okay, well, it didn't kill the chicken, so let's try it and see what happens. That's not a great way to practice medicine, but that's all we've had for a long time. So ARAV focuses their journal and their annual conference on bringing information in, and usually novel information. And it's not just Americans, it's also Australians. We have a really nice Australian base. Germany comes to play. We have people from Spain that come to play. We've had, Greek speakers, things like that. So they come from all over the world and bring the knowledge from where they practice and give us different points of view as well. And so that's actually probably one of the cooler things.
Awesome. So ARAV is actually something that you brought to me when we met. And like I told folks before you came on, I thought it was cool that I saw the company progress, and I know you and Ryan and all these different things. You and I, and then Ryan a little bit later, came together in a different vein of reptiles, which is also something you are Midwest Tinley reptile famous for, in that you founded and then ran Friends of Scales.
Yes. So that is one of the reasons I actually got so involved with reptile medicine. The two actually went together. So the wanting to advance husbandry and wanting to learn more about reptile medicine and the anatomy and the physiology, and like, okay, so this went wrong in their husbandry. How do we fix it down the road? Does it ever get fixed? And we learned so much about reptile medicine through having Friends of Scales Reptile Rescue. It actually brought in a lot of veterinarians in the Midwest to reptiles, because they would come to the clinic that I worked at, which was Chicago Exotics, and they would do like internships or externships technically, and they would be exposed to all my reptiles. They'd be like, hey, here, fix it, figure out what happened to it, because they said it's perfect and it's not. And so you got to see firsthand the differences that UVB and UVA made in these animals. Hypervitaminosis A, so when people are over supplementing vitamin A, or even when they're not supplementing vitamin A, how that actually affects the uptake of vitamin D, which then, causes that whole cascade effect of everything going to hell in the calcium situation. So it was really interesting to see how all these parts played together, and then how by improving one part of husbandry, we were able to fix these animals and stabilize them and then adopt them out. So that was actually, it's not something that is like across the nation, but for like Illinois, Indiana, it was probably one of the bigger things for inundating a lot of new veterinary students into reptiles.
For sure. So I bring all of that up because
I forgot it.
no. So like before you came on, I was telling people like, so I talk about different stuff on this podcast, and then when I'm a guest on other podcasts, and just in general, like people know me, like I use Zoopoxy, and then Mike Stefani talks about it, and we build monitor stuff. People know that I talk about black box cages because they sponsor the network, but then I'm the guy that like, no, I actually have them, and then like I did videos about them, and then I talk about you guys, and like all over Teresa and I's social media was Friends of Scales, and then now there's Vivtech stuff and all these different things. And from the my thing from the perspective of like I was talking to you, and then I put in the show notes like, you know, Tinley's coming up, so I can talk to you guys about that. You always do cool stuff, and NARBC, and like that's kind of our jam because we're from here.
Mhm.
And in herpetoculture, it's a big deal because it's NARBC, but it's like our local deal. And I have always thought it was cool because the idea being, you know, you go to reptile shows because you can talk to the breeder and see the animal and all these interpersonal interactions. And then you guys did Vivtech, and it to me it's a little weird because I'm friends with you, so the interaction is a little different, but like the idea is the same. Like it's not big box store type of thing. It's the same like caliber of product that it's you know, it's electronics, it's a new thing, it's technology. But I can literally stand here and talk to you in person, and you're not like the Vivtech rep. It's in your living room. So it's not like
It's
it's
in my dining room, technically.
yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. Um I just like it was very different to me, or I guess I saw it in a very different way. Um because I am also pointing at children off screen. Um but like my thing with it is because I've had people ask me, you know, selling light bulbs and like it's a sales pitch and sitting there, and it's like, well, it's a business, like you got to make money, but like it was you and Ryan really neither one of you came from like the business background. Like people had this weird assumption, right? Like Ryan was the Zilla dude and you were the rescue lady,
Mhm.
and that's accurate, but like Ryan is an engineering nerd who ended up working for a company that makes pet stuff, and then you were vet tech rescue, like very care knowledge, cuddly squishy feelings person keeping animals as pets. And then like it like how it came about, like I didn't think folks, when people talk to me, I could tell whether or not they had like met you guys at a show or that kind of thing, or like they saw a Facebook debate and or we're gonna debating on buying a light bulb or whatever, like business side of things.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, like it never clicked to me when people were like, well, I mean, you know, like it's like so you know, competitor, you know, X, Y, and Z, you buy it at PetSmart, this thing, and like nobody knows that guy. Like it's the ethereal person who built the aquarium
It's
or whatever.
oh,
Yeah. And I just it whenever I was talking to people, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna have them on and it's gonna be weird because I'm friends with them. But like that's like always what I've been trying to convey with the episodes was like, oh yeah, you should just meet somebody who you should meet Mike Stefani and ask him about Mertens monitors. Like he's just some
oh my
dude
God, yes.
who keeps lizards. Like
Mhm.
to me, you guys were the same way. Like you're talking about UV, you're talking about vitamin A and how it deals with calcium and all these different things about animal care that are very high level, you know, very evidence and information driven. But then, like, I could just stand at NARBC and talk to you about that.
Oh
Like,
yeah, and I
I'm
also want to hear your side of it because if you're like, dude, I can't use that on my sulcata, it's gonna like crush it. I'll be like, I hit it with a blacksmith hammer 6 times, and you're like, oh, okay, like that all like people I think don't understand that they can still talk to us because we're not the refs. It's our life. So we want to hear the no, your product sucks. Okay, why? Like,
Right.
tell us.
So in that vein, I guess, like how has that gone for you guys through this process of, so you release the product and now you have some different things which are pretty cool and but are not necessarily like UV specific light driven. You're going in different angles, which is fun. But like how has that gone for you? Because you guys, you really went straight shows like, hey, this is me standing in person. Check out these light bulbs. I have them right here. It wasn't like a product rollout at Walmart or something. Like you didn't have like a debut and then go to the store. Like it's been you
No.
guys the whole time. So like how has that gone as far as for me, it looks like awesome. It's very, very receptive. Is that how it has felt on your end? Like how is that
Sorry,
going for
I'm gonna
you?
throw a shoe at my dogs to stop wrestling.
It's all good.
So, Butters, stop being a pain. So it's been weird.
Another
Speaking of
star of your
today,
social media are the dogs.
yes, because he's adorable, but right now he's a pain in the ass. It's been weird. It's honestly been really weird because people for a lot initially, everybody thought Zilla like sponsored us or like gave us the money to make this. Like this was like an offshoot. I was like,
Okay.
no. Like,
Okay.
yes, Brian did all their stuff and like all their lighting stuff. And he helped pioneer some of the changes in the lighting industry for Zilla. And now we're taking it a step further and pioneering a different route. But because he was so known for his UV side
Sure.
at Zilla, like it was a little bit difficult of being like, no, we are very different entities. They will not appreciate it if you say that we're an offshoot. So that's been kind of interesting, is trying to let people like help people understand that no, we're still putting on the Disney magic that we did with the rescue. The out front, everything looks like we make like multi-millions, because we just like slick looking stuff. And I'm literally in my dining room and you've seen my dining room, Bill. It's not exactly like massive back there. And
she says this stuff. Her dining room has some of the coolest reptiles you have ever seen in your life. And they're in her dining room. So don't let her fool you with this nonsense. It's also packed full of light bulbs, but it has a lot of really cool reptiles as well. So
yeah, and that's been a really interesting turn, is that people do, like when you start selling products, people all of a sudden take everything you say with like a massive grain of salt. It's not a little grain of salt. It is like a massive grain of salt if they hadn't met you before. Sure. Whereas when I was doing like the rescue or the clinic, people just assumed you were telling the truth all the time. We're like, oh, okay. I'm like, I don't understand where like the misconception is, because there's a lot more lying probably on like, the moving animal side of the world, even in breeders and stuff like that, than there is necessarily.
I see with that. Yeah, I get what you're saying there.
So I don't know. It was kind of interesting where people viewed like the sincerity and how they viewed the sincerity. We've also been getting a lot of interesting kickback, and I'm going to call it out, from the reptile lighting group. They do not like us, which is understandable. Like, we're new. And there are some bulbs that you can get off like Alibaba and stuff like that, or even on Amazon now. I actually just bought a whole bunch of them. Oh my God, people, shut up. Sorry, my thing keeps beeping. And those bulbs are horrible. Like the ones that you can get off of there, a lot of times are just like, they look like ours because they have the same casing as ours, but they're not the same as ours. The diodes are different. The drivers that are inside are different. And people just assume that we're taking those bulbs and then just slapping a really nice, pretty label on it and kind of like snake oiling them. Right. So that's been a really interesting problem to have.
I have heard the same thing. And I don't know. All of these conversations are weird because I know you guys, but I like it because I talk about your stuff, and I talk about stuff that I use, and so people question me on it, which is cool, but I maybe not like as hard as they would question you guys, I guess, like because I don't work for you or whatever.
You can.
Right. So it's, I don't know, I guess it's just a different vibe, I suppose. But what I thought was really interesting with that idea of, because when you and Ryan were first doing stuff, and Ryan was trying to figure all this out, and you were working like crazy to fund his insane idea, and he was talking to me and going back and forth in the idea of, so here is my understanding of how this kind of works, right? So you guys source your bulbs from wherever, and you have these specifications, and you say, hey, I really like the case you have for your lights because it looks how I want it to look, and these are the guts that I want in it to get the results that I want for my product. And then some whatever place manufactures it how you asked. It comes to you. This is the thing that you asked for, your brand, your specific construction. So it goes in your branded stuff, and then I buy it, and it's in a box that says your stuff, and that's what I get. And I don't understand like how that doesn't make sense to people. Like, so when and what's really, I don't know, this all goes back to like those people in Facebook groups or wherever. I've met people in person who asked me about you guys. It's so obvious that they did. Like, I was like, dude, just go to a show and ask him. Like, take a par meter, buy a par meter from somebody else. Don't buy their UV meter, buy somebody else's, and go there and stand with Ryan. He'll take one out of a box, like he doesn't care, and plug that sucker in with whatever it is you brought, and shoot your little laser at it and figure it. Like, it's weird to me that your initial idea for UV, the products you initially came out with are UV bulbs. What they produce is measurable. Like, so if I thought that you were just selling me Wish light bulbs, I can measure it, and like I know if your lights suck because I have a thing that measures whether or not your lights suck. And so I understand when herpetoculture debates whether or not they want to use UV. Like, that's a long-standing debate. So I use it for this species, I don't use it for that species, whatever. I just did not understand the initial, like, well, those lights don't even work. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, because you can turn it on and measure it. And then if it doesn't work, like, I can call you or email you or, go through whatever official process. But like,
with that 2-year guarantee, for God's sake.
But it was just so strange to me. Like, oh, it's just the stupid light off Alibaba. And it's like, all right, we'll order it and then measure it. And that's not true. Like, it's like, well, that says 80 and that says 7. So I thought that was such a strange thing for people to come at you guys about. I know, like, Ryan is hardcore about, using appropriate UV and so on and so forth, which I find funny because when he talks about those things, he talks about healthcare things that you're like, well, how do you know? And it's like, Vivtech handbook. Like that. Like, it's
that person right there. That's why.
It's a strange, it's just always been a strange debate. And like, so do you, like, on that particular one where folks are like, they're knockoff bulbs or whatever, like, have you seen that get better as more people are using your bulbs and like, 'cause there's bunches of, YouTube videos and Facebook and stuff, like, everybody has a par meter. Chameleon folks are really big on it, and measuring everything is very specific for certain, Uromastics. Different keepers are very particular about it, and so a lot of those people post those things, and I've seen you guys' bulbs where people measure them and are like, oh, this is the distance I use, and so on and so forth. And so, you're showing these things in practice. So have you seen that part improve now that more people have access to them, or?
Yes. So there are people, and it's actually a very small number, that
Ryan, she's a smart lady. You don't have to worry about her looks. Shut up. She already has your last name.
And these people will stand on that hill and they will die on that hill of LED is, not up to speed, up to snuff, whatever. And that's because you can buy our casings and stuff, and you can even probably buy from our manufacturer. The bulb you're going to get, though, isn't our bulb, because ours is made for us to our specs, like you said. People have been seeing that, though, because there's a number of zoos that have us, like Gladys Porter Zoo, for instance, which is headed by Colette Adams. And if you don't know who Colette is, good Lord, you guys got to go and look her up. She's absolutely, and she was actually featured, I think, on USARK's Florida International Women's Day, too. Mm-hmm. And they use our bulbs, and they actually put one of the first calls on one of their toads. I don't remember which toad it is. Ryan will chime in at some point and tell you what toad it was. And the head keeper for reptiles actually sent him a text message and was like, toads don't bask. What is this thing doing? And you turn it on and it'd be like, oh, and it comes out and it basks. And then if it's off, he goes, done. And he goes right back. Doesn't care. He doesn't come out for any other reason other than bask. It's amazing what people are starting to see. And they were a little bit hesitant about it too. Because again, it was we've heard, and there are LED bulbs that suck horribly. We had one, I think we told you about this, Bill. We had one when we were first starting because we were looking for bigger casings because people want bigger bulbs. No problem. We're working on it, trying to find, and we're looking at a bigger casing. So we got a prototype in, and it was like on the UV meter. So the UV meter, the UVI index meter, read it at like, this is what it is. The UV meter read it as, this is what it is. And then when we put it under an ocean optics spectrometer, it showed up like huge amounts of UVC. Tiny bit of UVB, which was enough to trick the meter and to trick the UVI because it's so easily manipulated. One of the big problems is we don't have a good system for broadband radio meters. That's the big thing, is we just don't have a good way to do it. Instead of like being off by maybe like 5 nanometers or like 1 or 2 nanometers, it can be off by like 30 nanometers in a direction. And then it depends on like if you're calibrating and all these things. So some of that we've been concerned that people are putting like animals under like traditional bulbs that are way bad for them, and they have no idea because their radio meter might not be, actually reading at what it's supposed to be. But for the most part, we have seen a good chunk of improvement where people are, if we're getting like picked on a little bit, people will actually come back at them like, no, I have seen this. Stephen Lewis is another like vlogger, and he even says like, I seen this on my snakes and it works. They come out, they want to be involved with it. But a problem is that we're also challenging the status quo, and you know how well that goes, Bill, when you challenge the status quo. And one of it is the Ferguson zones are cowpop, kind of. Like, they're a great guide to start. I will die on the hill that my Amazon tree boa is not a zone 1 animal until the day I die, because they come out and bask during the day under their jungle cover. So they'll be in like zone 2, zone 3 sometimes, and they're happy. Bearded dragons are higher than zone 3, easy. But that's all that we have to really work with right now. Oh, Ryan's talking about how the Mangshane's basked, the Bushmaster basked. I have no idea how to even say that one. Bill, that's on you.
Phrynotis aspera. It's the giant Asian toads.
There.
Which
Oh,
are,
that's the toy.
yeah, those are super cool.
Yeah, and so.
And I will tell you that I have owned that species, and they bask and they seek UV. Just saying.
See?
I don't own Gladys Porter Zoo, but I have had really big toads, and they do seek UV.
They're amazing. And we've had a couple of other ones. Even Josh's Frogs carries us. And I'm sorry, if Josh's Frogs is endorsing you and it's like, hey, we're going to take a chance on you, chances are that's pretty good, that you're doing something right and they believe in you. Like Nikki Smith will die speaking UV for us. She absolutely loves our product and tells everybody about it all the time.
So I did have a question about that. Not them specifically, but do you notice, or have you noticed, I guess, as this has kind of progressed forward? So the people, because you guys do so much at shows, I feel like, well, and I know you do a lot of online stuff too now, but like, I feel like that model would give you pretty immediate feedback, or a better idea for trends, I guess. And so my question is, do you notice, or have you noticed, more people are like, I keep a species known for UV necessity, and I'm a chameleon guy, or I'm a Eurymastix guy, or I'm an iguana guy, and then they seek you out? Or have you noticed a difference where it is folks who are, I keep colubrid and I want to go more full spectrum lighting, and so I'm coming to you? Are you seeing a mix of those people, or like more of one crowd as opposed to another crowd? Have you noticed anything like that, where it's Euro guys are like, I would like a new UV source, I'm going to try you out? Or it's folks who are, because naturalistic and full spectrum lighting is kind of catching steam now, and you guys are obviously on social media a big part of that. Are you getting response from that? Like, yeah, I'd like to try full spectrum lighting, and your company be a part of it. Like, do you see differences there?
So I can't say yes. In my mind, and I didn't even tell this to Ryan, like I had an idea of like what kind of people we were going to get. Like I thought for sure we were going to get a lot of Chelonian keepers. So, because those guys really like really on top of it, whether they're a breeder or a personal keeper, usually that's
I do
like
that too. Just saying.
Right? They're like the equivalent to like the family dog, or in your case, like the family mastiff, since, I remember when the mountain was with you guys.
And my giant sulcata is under one of your lights. Anyway.
Oh, please be happy. So like I thought for sure it'd be like a lot of Chelonian keepers and a lot of like the larger monitor keepers. Like monitor keepers would definitely be on it, because it's a hardy bulb that can't get pulled out of the socket. It doesn't have the flicker rate that drives them completely batty. And it has, again, such a longevity for the UV. So we thought for sure this would be something that we'd see I thought for sure there'd be something we would see more of. And I can tell you the people that are actually coming to us the most are dart frog keepers. Like right out of the blue, they were one of the first people to adapt to this technology. They're like, yeah. So I'm convinced that dart frog keeping is like the equivalent to saltwater keeper.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's the next best thing. Let's go. I 100%. Heard from this guy, it's great. We're on board. I'm like, that okay, sure.
For sure.
And then ball python keepers. We have a lot of ball python keepers that are purchasing, and I'll get emails saying, I have a ball python in this size enclosure, this size enclosure. What do you recommend? I have a ball python, group. Like, can I daisy chain them together? Well, you can't daisy chain them, but if you get like those, elongated like cords with like little strands that come down, it's kind of like daisy chaining. You can put all of those across and you can do like a whole grouping of them. Yeah. So we've been seeing a lot of those, and like one-offs of just keepers. we have some breeders that utilize us, but they have to transfer like everything over from like a
Sure.
different system.
Yeah, if you're a system person, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes
And
sense.
it's a lot of keepers who come to us because they're doing bioactive, or
Yeah,
they come to us
for sure.
because their bearded dragon now lives in a 6 foot by, and I'm not even kidding, this was an email I got. It's a 6 foot long enclosure. It's like almost 2 feet tall, and then it's like 2 feet deep. And I was like, yes, that is awesome. And she's like, it's got plants and it's got this and it's got that. I'm like, you're so cool. Like, yes, grab our bulb. But those are the people that are coming to us, and then the zoos are coming to us. So it's a little bit interesting. It's not where I thought we would be. I thought for sure it'd be a lot more like the Chelonians, the large monitors, and it went the opposite way of where I thought.
So, do you think? Because I see that also, and I was just wondering if you guys saw something different from what I saw. So that's cool that what you saw kind of mates up with what I had seen social media herpetoculture style. Do you think that like, do you think maybe that plays out because they're LED and they're small? And so do you think that the people, like, because if you're a big lizard, tortoise, iguana person, you are so used to huge flood bulbs, hugeness and big things, and they smash stuff, and it's more of a like a perception thing, you know, whereas if you
size queen situation, yeah.
But like to me, when I initially saw Dart Frog people go for you guys, it's like, well, yeah, small LEDs, you know, heat sensitive things, like it's very system, or to me it seemed very system friendly. I put you guys' stuff in Arcadia bulb holders, and I can just screw them in wherever I want, and they're little, they don't mess with the heat. I can just bang them out all over the place. The flip for me is I do the same thing, but also over giant stuff. So like over a rhinoceros iguana, I actually have them in domes over the green iguana, but I just stuck it right in with the giant enclosures, the same as I did with the small. I obviously a more powerful bulb, but yeah, I saw the same kind of trends, and I wonder if that's what, like, they're just so used to, well, you got to have a 300-watt flamethrower, otherwise, you know, monitors don't like it, or whatever nonsense you're talking about.
If you can't make an egg underneath it, it's not a bulb for you.
Right. Whereas you got lunatics like me, where I'm like, what if I did a DP projector and a tiny LED UV, and I can keep a 4-foot green iguana in a 7-foot long, 6-foot tall, 4-foot deep enclosure where there's a red foot on the bottom also. I mean, maybe they were eating salad this morning together. I don't know. It's possible. But, you know, whatever.
It's interesting that, and it's something that I have come up on several times, is, you know, exposure ratio. And I think part of that is because we've had like the mercury vapor bulbs, which is like the all-in-one, you know, forever. Yeah. And they're like, you have to have it so that it covers like X percentage of your animal in order to work. Part of that is because like they don't want you to burn a hole through like one tiny spot of your animal. So folks, that's why. But also when you're talking thermal regulation, you need as much surface area exposed as possible to heat up, to cool down, things like that. So it's a complete surface area game when you're talking about thermal regulation. When you're looking at UV regulation, you don't need that. You just need to like dip your toe out, and you get all of that in there because it's a photobiology and a photochemistry thing going on. So the moment that UV penetrates through your skin, you're getting chain reactions that, even though it's starting here, it starts here too, and it's over here, and it's in your, you know, kidneys and stuff. Like, it moves through your body because it hits into your serum, and it just goes. And it's one of the coolest things. It's one of the most misunderstood things too, because everybody just assumes you need a large amount, but you don't. You just need to have, that's why cryptic basking works so well. You can't tell me my tiny little tokay gecko who exposes maybe a 1/4 inch of its back to the bulb. And I know it is doing this because it's the only spot on the wall that's like, you know, open from like the cork. And it'll just like stick out there like, all right. And then it takes off. Or snakes who will just like flop
the
its
leopard
tail out.
geckos with the highly reflective white tail and the super dark black spots that they just stick out. That might be a thing. You know,
the fact that they live on sandy areas, such as the picture behind us, although that's not a leopard gecko, but is that a color lizard? Like, what is it supposed to be? I can't tell.
I'm not sure which one's behind it currently.
Oh, okay. But like those, Boogie, they can't see you. But those ones, they might hide during the day, but they're still getting refraction. So it comes down, the sun comes down with the UV, hits the ground, and then it refracts. That's actually like a huge part of like, you know, physics, to be honest, is light comes down and it goes down and then it moves around.
So I think this is a weird thing. And yes, and I know I've had this discussion with bunches of people, and I've had bunches of people really struggle to understand it. And
I didn't understand it until recently. So
well, here's my thing. I think it's a little bit of a misunderstanding and a little bit of a byproduct of potentially where or how you grew up. So I grew up fishing and doing a lot of water stuff with my parents. And then I grew up doing a lot of snow activities with my family as well. And I am very fair skinned. And I have absolutely worn like a boonie cap or a head cover and still sunburnt the underside of my face. And my parents told me, you got to put sunscreen on your face. It will bounce off the water and it will sunburn your face. It'll bounce off the snow and it'll sunburn your face.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up knowing that. Like if I wear sunglasses, I got to put sunscreen on my cheeks or whatever, because it literally reflects off the water or reflects off whatever, and it will sunburn you. Yep. And so when you guys initially started talking, and even before that, talking to Ryan and you and everybody when we were keeping stuff for the rescue, and we keep all the big critters and all the ridiculous stuff, and how to play that out, to me, that just made sense. Because it's like, oh yeah, if I can catch a sunburn off it, that's what's doing that. Mm-hmm. You know, and so I knew that those wavelengths and those things were able to reflect and it wasn't a straight travel directly from the fireball. You know, there were different ways to accomplish this. And when you guys initially started talking about it a lot more, because early on when you guys were doing a lot of posting, a lot of your posts were about cryptic basking, and there were some really cool pictures and stuff you guys had taken with some of your animals, and you saw a lot of really neat stuff, and you could see people in the comments and stuff that didn't quite get how it was working, and I really think that's a part of it, man. Is just like sometimes people probably struggle to equate their experiences to what is happening to their animals. But I think a lot of those people are using, like, their pets might be their exposure to like the wild or whatever. And so like maybe they just never got sunburnt standing on a lake one day. Like they might genuinely not, you know, get it as far as what you guys are talking about with availability of UV in the environment that you're creating in this little diorama. You know what I mean?
That makes sense, because I was just thinking, as you were saying, you know, this might be their like foray into the wild. I was thinking about Ryan when he did it was, I think, in Madison, and he went and did a presentation for kids in Madison, and it's Wisconsin. So you just assume like everybody hunts. Like that was my assumption. I lumped y'all together. I'm sorry. I just assumed like everybody goes out and hunts. Everybody is, you know, active because it's Wisconsin. And there were kids that had never seen a frog before. And so that really does that makes a lot of sense. And that's something that I'm still working on and struggling with, is how to simplify this down for people who don't have the exposure to, the dreaded raccoon eyes, where you have like the sunburn everywhere else except for your sunglasses, or the farmer's tan, while you're driving and stuff like that. So that's actually a really good point. It's hunting, beer, and cheese. See, Jessica, thank you. It's not
Accurate.
just me.
I mean, my favorite place in the whole state's the Cheese Castle, so I can't debate that.
I think they changed the mouse, though.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, someone told me that it looks like the Chuck E. Cheese mouse now.
Oh, that's not cool. Don't do that.
Right? And the Chuck E. Cheese mouse is creepy, so,
So, kind of on that same thought process, with the big stuff, because that's obviously my exposure to a lot of things. What I am looking at and trending toward in my keeping, and I'm wondering if you don't get I assume you get quite a bit of feedback in this vein, is I've moved to a lot of DP projectors for how I'm heating animals, especially for large things. But I have also moved to doing heat and UV in different areas. I'm a little weird because I have a lot of giant enclosures with a lot of giant things. And so even for small things, I have a lot of giant enclosures. But what I am attempting to do is have those two things be in different areas so that I can basically know what I'm messing up and what I need to alter, so I know what my animals are looking for. Just given with like the idea of you guys' bulbs being LED, small space, not tube length, we're not covering the whole enclosure. Are you seeing a little bit more of that? Because like, especially with the dart frog folks, like they're not really going for heat anyway. So having a designated area where they have UV kind of makes sense for them, because then, you can see the frogs seek it out. You can see the behaviors. You can actually notice these things. And those keepers kind of do fall into your saltwater analogy in that they usually are a little more attentive. The whole idea for them is to just kind of watch the art on the wall kind of thing, see behaviors, see these things. And so are you noticing that, or have you had folks tell you that they're going for, this is my UV area, I see the animal utilize the UV area, this is my heat area, like the separation of actual UV basking? Because you guys post that quite a bit. Are you seeing feedback that other folks are getting that as well?
We are. So initially we weren't, because again, before it was always like, this is no shade on Zoom Ed. I actually love their duo domes. But they always had the dual domes because it was a fluorescent and it was like a halogen or whatever you wanted to put next to it. And fluorescents can be next to heat. It doesn't do anything to them. Like, it's completely fine for them. LEDs can't be next to a heat source. Heat and LEDs don't like each other. That's why LEDs aren't hot, because it's bad for the drivers in the chips. So initially it was helping people learn how to utilize them properly, and then say, like, keep it like 5 inches away, 5 or 6 inches away, or if you want, just put it on like the cool side, and then just have the heat on the other side, and let us know what you think. Is it just going for heat, or is it actually going for the UV now too? And because, hello, Adler, because we started telling people that in the beginning, all of a sudden that's like how people just assume that you should do UV in some cases. And I'm like, sure, that's fine. Like, so now they're doing it to see for themselves. So it's a really unique thing, because I didn't think that this was going to happen, but it's like this own little like social approval kind of situation where like how we look at reviews, and then we kind of determine if we want to buy something based on the reviews. And then if you're like, no, that guy's a schmuck, don't buy from him, I'm like, oh, okay, like that's fine. People are doing the social proof, but on their animals, and they're starting to put like a heat area, a UV area, and then maybe like an LED strip for lighting or, something like that, just for extra ambiance. And they are seeing that there is a definitive difference between seeking out heat and seeking out UV.
Right.
So that we have been seeing that a lot more. And it's also really interesting that we're already starting to see a change in how people are setting their standards. It's not one area where your animal has to cook or get UV. It can now choose to, cook itself and be a happy little warm animal. And then it can move over and get the UV that it needs because it's not going to need the UV exposure as long.
Right. So
right,
we do have one question I saw. Let me go back to that. Was what bulbs would you recommend for carpet pythons or dwarf monitors?
Ooh. Also, when do you think they'll have the bulbs in stock? Yeah, we get that. So they will be in stock at Tinley. I promise. They will be there. That being said, now something horrible is going to happen, so I'm going to knock on wood. But we had our actual manufacturer. We told them, so this is something I'm not supposed to share it, but we were talking to our manufacturer, and we're like, hey, we have our big event coming up. Like the Tinleys are two of our biggest events,
Sure.
And we told them that we're going out there and people want them and need them, and we don't have anything for these folks. And he's actually sending them fast, like as fast as they can get here. So it's going like on a plane and getting here really super quick, because they want us to actually have them, because they have actually seen, our manufacturers do follow, and they see like little tidbits, come up for like Vivtech and things like that. So
sure.
See you guys, they hear our conversations, and they also were very supportive. So they're making sure that we have our bulbs for Tinley. But back to the actual question. So carpet pythons and dwarf monitors, it completely depends on how tall your enclosure is. Because if you're going by the UVI, which there someday will be a better option than UVI, you have to kind of determine what you're going for. So if you have like a 2-foot enclosure, like a 2-foot tall enclosure, absolutely you can do like a midday blaze for all of those, depending on where your branches are and things like that. It all depends on where your basking site is in comparison to the bulb. We didn't do the whole one size fits all of like, this is only for desert animals, this is only for tropical animals, this is only for, nocturnal animals. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. Crepuscular. That's the word. Crepuscular animals. We actually we use those names like first call to insinuate that this would be good for frogs, but also so that people would look at the back of the box and go, oh, like it's going to be zone 1, for the majority of it, unless it's like really up close. So maybe for my 2.5-foot tall, giant vivarium for my dumpy white tree frog, I'm going to use a jungle cover. So it honestly depends on the height. But if you let me know the height, I can tell you.
So I actually did wonder that from what you were just talking about with and actually the comment that just came in about folks observing animals and how people keep. Do you notice, or I should say I have noticed, and I'm wondering if you guys notice it as well. I don't really know how to verbalize that, I guess. The using your stuff and how, you didn't say, use this bulb for this animal. And it's kind of on you a little bit. Like you kind of need to know what you're doing. You need to know what you're looking for. You need to be able to reason through it, and you're building an enclosure. Like it's a little bit more involved, I guess, to use this type of product, which it didn't occur to me because I know this stuff, right? And so like I was telling Teresa, when you guys first were talking about this, and I was messaging with Brian, and you're showing me stuff, and I was talking to you guys, and I immediately was like, DP projectors and these UV bulbs, I can keep anything in the world. It's going to change. I like freaked out, and I was like, Because, dude, like, I keep giant stuff, and I keep a lot of stuff that needs UV, and I live in the Midwest, so when I heat stuff, it dries out, and like all these crappy things that are so hard for me to accommodate when I'm keeping these animals.
You spray them, they
This fixes,
explode.
dude. This fixes so like if I use a DP projector and I use this thing, and I dig full spectrum lighting and plants and stuff anyway, so I already was doing that kind of stuff. Like, it fixed so many of my problems, and
Mhm.
it let me do a lot of really crazy stuff that I'm still progressing through. I just wonder, like, are not enough people nerdy enough to get this, or like to like I don't understand how as soon as you guys made this, everybody wasn't like, we're done, let's go, we figured it out, like,
Well,
onward.
look what happened when UVB bulbs were first created. Just straight up, UV bulbs were created. They weren't well accepted at first. Zoom Ed literally came out, created, and if anybody doesn't know this, Zoom Ed actually created the first UVB bulbs, like, ever. Before that, we were just like, why does our stuff keep dying? I don't know why it keeps dying. Well, it's fine. And then Zoom Ed came out and created the first UV bulbs, and everybody went, "Oh, they don't need it. It's fine." Like, they still had to fight that this was snake oil and it was BS. So I think part of it is new technology. I think part of it is reptile keepers, like the American public, to be completely honest, is pretty normal. They're just slow. Sometimes they're just slow to, make changes, because there are the people. So there's three types. There's folks who will buy something that's brand new at a premium because they want to be part of the new thing that just came out, or they truly believe in it. They understand it. Like, you are one of those. Then there's the secondary group of folks, which are happy to come up to utilize new technology and new products or new services, but they want to see the social proof. They want to make sure that, like, your animals didn't die, and then they'll use it on theirs, or,
Okay. Yeah.
other bugs, and then come out with like maybe version 1.2. Then they'll jump on that train. And then there's the third set of people who won't utilize a new technology until it is basically forced upon them. Most Americans and most consumers just in general fall between A and B. And then there's the C group, which is like I miss my flip phone. Like,
Right.
if you've had that conversation, you might be closer to C than you think.
Right.
Because, the flip phone didn't break. It didn't do this. They knew their flip phone like inside and out. They knew the capabilities of it. And then when you switch them over to like an iPhone, they're like, holy cow, there's a lot of things this thing can do.
Right.
So, I think that's a part of it. I don't think it's willful ignorance. I think it's just, if you looked at other purchasing they did, that's probably similar to what, they've done with other electronics and things like that.
Sure. Man, I don't know. When I hear you say something like that, like, if you could tell me the height of the enclosure, I could tell you the bulb. And it's like, agreed. You could go to Vivtech and read which bulbs they are, and then you could read a book about carpet pythons. Just build it. Like, I don't know. I do wonder, though.
Wants to spend their time nerding out or has
Yes.
access to some of the books that we do. Like, you have
Agreed.
a huge library. I have a huge nerdy library. Like, my photobiology books are one of my favorite things to read. And Ryan's like, I will fall asleep reading it. Like, so just give me the cliff notes. We're cool with that.
I do wonder if, like, some of the pushback you guys see on social media is a little bit of that. Like, it's, like the Dunning-Kruger effect. Like, when you know so little that you can't understand how much you don't know. You know what I mean?
You know just enough to become dangerous.
Yes.
And
Right.
That's just enough to cause a problem.
Right. And I do wonder that, because the people that have talked to me that were either negative about your stuff or negative about UV in general, or all these different things, if they actually message me or text me or whatever and have a conversation, almost universally at the end of the conversation is, oh, okay. Like they get it. You know, I cannot think of someone who has talked to me about this stuff and at the end been like, you're dumb and I'm not doing that. Like I've not, you know, I have talked to people that were like, I need to phase it in, or, you know, like they couldn't buy 50 bulbs or whatever, you
And
know, like
understandable. Yeah.
normal stuff, you know. But I've not run across people that are just like, no, you know what I mean? You
Yep. There's
see that on social media, where in the echo chamber group nonsense, you get the crazy no's. But then when you talk to those people individually and are like explaining, you know, what it is you're doing and so on and so forth, like I've never not had someone have the light bulb moment. You know what I mean?
light bulb moment.
Right? Pun intended. But I don't know. I just like, do you notice that? I mean, at shows, I would think, like, do you guys spend a lot of time explaining, you know, if it's an arboreal enclosure, and like literally just going through the mechanics of setting up a vivarium and that kind of thing, as opposed to
Yep.
like pitching UV bulbs? Like instead you're more like coaching animal care, I guess.
Originally, I personally struggled with my role in the company because I was like, I don't want to just, like you said, pitch things nonstop. And, you know, Ryan and I talked about like how's the best way to approach things and talk to people, because we didn't want to be like staunchy and be like, here, this is the whole thing. Like, yeah, we might have like the opening spiel that we tell you because it answers like 80% of your questions right off the bat. And like that helps. But you're right. Most of it is actually just coaching people through animal care and completely nerding out about like the things they're keeping. We have one person who's like, I have like a 4-foot tall enclosure for my green adults. I'm like, you are the coolest person ever. And, you know, how they can mount these in the enclosure and things like that, because it's not going to burn them. It's not going to destroy them. My Amazon tree boas, for goodness sake, curl up on them, you know, when they want to perch that's closer to the mister nozzle, because they like to drink out of the misty nozzle.
Ooh,
So,
and that goes back to, there was a question in the live chat about a cover for the light.
oh, no, you do not need a cover for the light. Because, and to be completely honest, so I don't know if this is something that's common knowledge either. It's out there, but I don't know how common it is anytime UV is going through, any light really, is going through like wire mesh, chicken wire, anything like that, it is filtering out some of your UV. So it takes down, like in some cases it can go down to like 30%, or not down 30%, but it takes it down like 30%. So you have to increase the strength of your bulb. Or you can just mount it internally. If you're mounting it internally, you don't have to worry about it. These are not easily to pull out. So they're not, what are they called? G9s, where with the 2 prongs.
Yep.
So they're not like that. They're not where the animals can just like flip it out like our spinulosus used to do. These are E2627 screw in. So you just go into any kind of socket and turn it on. They are metal casing. They are tough as nails. Again, I hit it with a blacksmith hammer 6 times, and the only thing I did was dent the connector, and I finally shattered the glass, but it wasn't even a shatter. It was like a crack. It wasn't even like satisfying, which irritated the tar out of me. I wanted like the big poof moment, and it was like, oh, okay. But I'll put that video up at some point for you guys. I have to edit out all my cussing. But these ones, they can be misted. They can be hung on by the animals. And as long as your mount that you put in there is sturdy, they're not going to go anywhere and they're not going to affect it at all. So that is one of those. That's one of the cool things about our bulb, is that you don't have to worry about them burning themselves. Like you don't have to worry about your animal like cuddling up against it and then burning themselves. But
I have a brittle python that just hangs off of it. So
yep. And because you'll notice like they'll keep their body like almost all out of it, and then every now and then like a roll of like coils comes over, or like the tail.
So mine is on the, you guys who are listening can't see my hands, they're literally above my head. That makes no sense in an audio format. it's the socket that the bulb is going into, and the thing
Mhm.
is just all over it. And yeah, and then occasionally it'll like swing down underneath of it. But yeah, you can absolutely tell that it's the body of the animal is outside of the beam itself, and it's just, you know, trying to hold on to the little ridges and stuff around the edge.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And when we talk to people at shows, we are talking about care and husbandry and, you know, the importance of UVA. That's actually one of our big driving things is the importance of UVA. And I'm going to call it out. I'm going to put it into the universe. Yes, there is one study, one on LED lights. And it wasn't our bulb. It was the other bulb. And I can guarantee you, if you know who I'm talking about, you know it was their bulb, but it wasn't even their bulb. It was a prototype of that bulb. And the study was published, and it posed the question of there's a tiny little amount that's like missing in the wavelengths and stuff. But is that wavelength important and imperative for the shutoff valve for D3, you know, going into calcium? That is a question that was called out for more research because they can't answer all the questions. And the point of a paper, especially a research paper, and I'm getting on my high horse, Bill, is you take a question that you have, you take a hypothesis that you have, and then you go, cool, I'm going to do what my like fifth grade self loved to do in school, and I'm going to actually physically do it. And then they do a study. Sometimes they're good studies, sometimes they're not so great studies. It depends on who's doing the study. But they do the actual physical study. And then at the end, the next part of it is they talk about, you know, the data analysis. And then the part after that talks about is the discussion. And that's where they go over what their findings were, and then what's statistically significant, what's not statistically significant, and then what problems may have been there, and then what their theory on those problems are, because it's calling more people to research. And that's what those papers are for. It's to open a doorway. It's not a like shut book where, you know, one study and like that's it. It's calling for more studies. It's calling to build off that information. And part of that was they want to build and call people out to do more research on what each of these like sections actually do, and do they mean something, do they not mean anything. So we're always learning, and that's part of what you're going to read in those papers. So I just wanted to address that because I'm pretty sure that question is going to come up at some point, that no, it wasn't on our bulbs, it was on a different bulb, and it's only hypothesized that hypervitamin D can occur with a bulb, but to date there has not been any hypervitamin D caused by a UV bulb. So I'll be impressed if that happens at some point. Adding into the diet, you absolutely can, you know, screw up that balance. But from a bulb so far, there hasn't actually been any published studies on it or findings on it. So that's something to kind of take into consideration too. So sorry, I had to put that tangent in there before I forgot it. And then it got asked and I completely forgot my point.
No, I'm glad you did. So we do have questions in the chat, and I will get to you guys, I promise. But on that particular note, for people who are more interested in the ideas between lighting and UV levels and vitamins and dosing and all these other things, I follow the Chameleon Academy podcast. I'm a huge nerd for everything that he does. And if you go look in his catalog of episodes, he has dosing episodes and vitamin episodes and all sorts of different things. And anyone who has an interest in UV and the uses of the bulbs and lights and their relation to vitamin A specifically, and how that is either dosed in food or what have you, and then just UV use in general. The chameleon side of herpetoculture is a million years ahead of most of us. They're so hardcore into it, and then not even directly in relation. Yeah, dart frogs as far as like overall setup of how to keep the small environment you made alive, and then chameleons as far as specific measurements for your equipment and uses of food and vitamins to keep this weird creature living. Those two parts of herpetoculture are just so far ahead of everyone else that if that is some kind of weird nerdy interest to you, I would go that way first.
Oh yeah.
And see, because my thing is, and I love listening to them because Chameleon Academy specifically, Bill Strand is the man's name. Bill, he talks about the results that he gets for his measurements. If you go back and you want to just copy like the enclosure he made, he'll tell you like it's this light at sizes and whatever.
Yeah.
But what he talks about is I got X result, and this is how many eggs or bad shells or this girl did well or what have you. And so that lets you, and this is kind of the point we were talking about earlier of you kind of got to be advanced enough to know kind of what you need to do here. If you are looking to just replicate a result, then you could use something like a Vivtech bulb or placement or height and all these things. And you're just looking for the measurements that he's talking about.
Yep.
As opposed to if you're going to get really specific of like, I use midday blazes at 18 inches for 40-inch enclosures. And like, then you're getting in the system of achieving these results as opposed to what vitamin A levels you're looking for.
Exactly.
And that's a lot of like high level nerdery. And so if you go that route, and a lot of the Dart Frog folks, Amphibicast, that particular podcast talks about a lot of that, that you can get really into the nitty gritty of setting up these different things. Chameleon Academy has experimental enclosures, talks to folks that set up 4 and 5 different brands and sizes and all these things. And you can see other people do that in real time. So I definitely would encourage folks to go that way if you want to learn more about what Erica is talking about with people in herpetoculture who are doing it for creatures like chameleons that if they don't have the UV, they're going to crash, and it. So
what's really cool about chameleons, now that you brought it up, is chameleons are, and you know this because you have Meller's chameleons. They are, right? Those Mellers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember things. But they are some of the weirdest creatures that you can keep because they're not like other lizards.
Yeah.
Like they looked at lizards and went, no, we're going to do this instead. So they're super picky on their, humidity and on their vitamins that they need. But like even on the amount of like fat versus protein that they need, like it's a whole cluster. But their UV needs are also super different because they don't have a super well-developed parietal eye, or the third eye that a lot of lizards have, like collared lizard or a bearded dragon, where you're like, oh, like that hole right there, that is a parietal eye. That's letting them find, their UV basking and all that good stuff. They don't have a very well-developed one. It's actually rudimentary. So they rely on other ways, like their eyes proper actually can see UV. So they rely on that a little bit more. So you have to figure out, how can you support their UV needs in a way that they can actually find it, which is where the UVA comes in. But there was a study actually that was relatively recent actually. No, it was in the aughts, the 2000 aughts. So you're not. But it was talking about how, there was some panther chameleons that when exposed to high doses of UVA and for like a prolonged period of time, but high doses, they didn't do so well. Okay, that's understandable. A lot of people won't do well if exposed to super high doses of UVA. I turned into a freaking tomato. I don't tan. I just turned into a tomato. But conversely, they also had that happen with high doses of UVB. So chameleons are one of those weird species that don't regulate their UV requirements as like intrinsically as some of the other ones, like as a bearded dragon. Bearded dragon will move itself and it doesn't give a darn. It just does whatever it wants. But like chameleons are more sensitive and they rely on the shade and things like that. So they're kind of like haphazardly, they're a little bit more haphazard on their UV seeking. Sorry, that was one of the coolest things I learned. But people do quote that paper all the time of, well, UVA will kill my chameleons. No, it won't. Actually, your chameleon needs UVA because if you've done any kind of like YouTube dives or even Facebook dives, you'll see, people with like the hot green that goes across their panther chameleons because they shined like a 365 nanometer black light on them, and like they just fluoresce.
Yep.
We don't see that. They do. And they see with their eyes proper. So they're looking like, it'd be like me looking at Bill, and then all of a sudden he's got like Avatar going on over here. That's the exact same thing. We just can't appreciate it. So they do need UVA. It's just they don't need the super high experimental doses. So
yeah, and like I said, the actual setups and the process of doing that, I strongly encourage folks to check that out. And it, again, I think it's kind of funny, like to hear folks who are uncertain about, LED or uncertain about the things that you're talking about, because if you go to there, you can watch it in practice and it works. And it's like, it's the whole idea of like proof or seeing it or whatever. And it's like, dude, just click on it. It's right there.
We bought I've been dopamining a little bit on Amazon. It's fine, it's a thing. But I bought a 365 nanometer blacklight. So there's a 365 and there's a 390 that you can get. The 390 is what a lot of people end up with because that's usually what they look like for like fungal or horrible things that happen in hotel rooms. Like they'll get like 390 for that. But it's too close to the visible light spectrum to really appreciate what's going on. 365 is like you're in the UV, you're in UVA, like you're in it. And so you can look at, what's around you. And I would never take that to a hotel room. You couldn't pay me to take that to a hotel room. But we did buy that.
Painting.
Oh, so we did buy it so that we could show it at events and show people like, this is what your animal looks like. This is how it sees its, conspecific or its friends. Like, this is how it sees its friends, or this is how it sees its prey. Even some snakes, like some of our colubrids in North America, we have lame snakes when it comes to UV, like patterns like showing up. They don't really show up very much. But if you shine it by their spectacles, it actually hazes out like your sunglasses do. So they actually have spectacles that, filter out some of that extra UV so that they can take it in, but it also can help filter it out. So it's really interesting. And again, that's another way we're trying to show people what they can't see and what they can't appreciate. But doing it like on a film doesn't get that information across, because then it's oh, you photoshopped it. Oh, you did this. Oh, you did that. But like you said, if you just come to an event and say, shine my black light on it, sure. We'll absolutely do that so that you can see what they see, because we can't appreciate it unless you were born with like aphexia or something like that. And then you can see UV, but you just can't see anything else really.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just, with the whole event thing, like I don't know, I guess I just kind of feel like, or I assume like your experiences, and Ryan's to some extent with Madison Herp and Zilla and stuff. But like your experiences when we all were together doing events for the rescue, it to me plays really heavily into how you interact with Vivtech at things like NARBC, because from what I saw and what I experienced was with what you were doing in the rescue avenue and things like that, was it had to be in person. You were talking to people, and like it was way more of an experience thing. And this is what it feels like and looks like, and helping you with your new pet and so on and so forth. And your angle on that was definitely very, if you're going to get a health check and we're going to, checking for mites and we're doing all these things, and you're talking to people about caring for their pet, was very interpersonal interactions and like they're holding it and you're explaining, going through all these things. And then you move into a product like this, and it is very similar to where it's like, yeah, I went and bought this UV and I'll just blast you with it. Like, like it is very experiential, which probably kind of sucks for you guys trying to sell stuff online, or, you know, the way things are going now with, you know, websites and Facebook and all that crap. But like, and I keep kicking back to things like NARBC because that's our jam. But like the whole idea of, dude, go there and blast this thing, check this light, you know, plug these in, play with this stuff. And it's a whole different game to be able to walk up to the table and be like, oh, well, what about your stupid blacklight thing, this, that, and the other? And it's like, no, like the lady you're probably talking to is the face on the thing right there. Like, it's that lady, you know what I mean? Like, or like this dude that she's married to, like, it's the guy. Like, it's not like the blacklight kid we hired to go to NARBC. Like, it's her blacklight from Amazon at her house.
Your
like,
job is to hold the black light. That's it.
You know what I mean? Like, or like the people that are hanging out at your table is like Alex and Ann, like the other people I know. Like it's like our people. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's very different for me.
We did. We tried to bring the experience. That was something that was a me thing, and I didn't want it to be the same experience that you had when you visited like the Zillow booth or the ZoomApp booth or the Axoterra booth, where it's somebody who came and they know there's, you know, the products and stuff like that. I wanted it to be more of an immersive situation. So you are welcomed into our booth space, and we encourage you to loiter, like look at stuff, poke things, ask to see it. We'll take anything out of the package. We don't care. We want you to handle it. Ryan will take a light bulb out of the package, and this drives me nuts, and beat it across the table whenever you ask him to show you, like, look, the diodes stay on, and look, it didn't even make a dent in it. We're happy to do those things so that you can even just like hold it and touch it, because like holding the light bulb is different than just looking at it, because it's heavier than you think it is, you know. And so that lends the, like, your monitor's not gonna rip it out and like chomp on it. Like, your crack Tegu or your crack monitor can come at it and it's not going to do much. Like, it's just not.
I've always thought that was funny too. And again, people are going to listen to this episode and it's weird because you guys are my friends, but like when this first started and Ryan was like, hey, you think you could break this? Like, you know, or like, you know, we would be he had a million different ideas and asked me, you know, about different stuff, and other folks through Zilla or through Madison Herp that kept different things or small stuff, or they kept geckos and I kept monitors or whatever. And stuff that you guys had your own extensive collection, so that, you know, testing it out on that or checking this out, or, you know, who had different stuff from you to start messing with things. And literally most of the stuff he talked to me about was like, do you think that this lizard could break this thing or whatever? And so like
just beat it up.
Yeah, from like the start of this, I've always thought that part was funny, because it was like, yeah, we just sprayed it with water for 6 hours to see what would happen, and then I hit it with a hammer or whatever. Like, it was R&D and it was testing, but that's like fun. but I knew the people, and so it was like, so you just like, you know, you're people think R&D like it's a laboratory and a dude in a white coat, and it's like, no, it was Erica with a hammer. Like, it was
it's on my front stoop.
Yeah.
Hold on, my herp stat is beeping. It's going to not stop. So
okay, yeah. Yes, Ryan is definitely the idea guy. I actually, so I thought that was kind of funny, and I was talking to Teresa and some other folks about this particular episode. Ryan is at a family event, so it was originally Ryan and Erica together. He has a family event, so it was just Erica. And I thought it was kind of funny because I knew the episode and the conversation would be a little different because I'm talking to one of my friends. But you guys kind of, it's going to be hard for a lot of you folks because you don't know me from NARBC, Friends of Scales, and the things that you would know me and Erica from, like, interpersonally. You know Erica from Vivtech, or me from the network, and different stuff that is not necessarily Midwestern based. And so if those of you who do know that or have been around, or if you ever end up in this particular avenue. This episode would take forever and would have gone off the rails if it was me and Ryan talking, because we are idea nerds, and that's how that goes. Erica
I will
is
sit there writing them down as we go.
Yeah, Erica is the person who like takes notes and reins things in, and then once this crazy idea happens, she is a creative person and has artwork and different plans and all these different things. And how it works and how it plays out is actually super cool. And so it was kind of a cool thing that like it would be this conversation, because it's like I have my idea nerd friend, and then he married this lady who is a different nerd, and how that works out, which is pretty cool.
I'm the deeper dive nerd.
Yeah. You're the emotional squishy person.
Stuff, and he's just like, no, I just want to make that. And then I'm going to give it to Bill, and he's going to try and break that. I'm like, okay, but can we find out like this part right here?
He's math and your emotions. Yeah.
Very much so.
So we had questions, one of which was books that you would recommend on this particular subject or in this idea.
So surprisingly, and brace yourselves, folks, there's not a lot of books on UVA. There is actually one book that's really just called UVA. It's from like the 80s or something like that. But it doesn't cover animals. It just covers, basically everything you need to know about UVA, but it was meant for dermatologists. So like the latter half, like the end of the book is more focused on, what can happen, like cancers, things like that, what kinds of things you need to worry about. So it's an interesting book, and I can send you a list of them too, Bill, if you want to put in like show notes or anything like that. Believe it or not, is it up here? It is. So y'all are going to see my sweatpants, and I don't care. I looked all nice on top, and I wore sweatpants on the bottom, but anybody who knows me knows that that's a thing.
It's like being on the news. It's okay.
It really is. Woo, this way. The secret social lives of reptiles actually is another great one. So it's not focused on UV, but it's focused on how they perceive each other, how they interact with each other. Reptiles do play, another hill I will freaking die on. But it has a huge section on that and how UV is actually imperative for those kind of social developments and allowing them to see each other and interact with each other. Like pheromone trails for garter snakes. Everybody thought for the longest time that they had to use their Jacobson's organ. So the little organ, the voronasal organ that's on the top of their mouth, and that's where their tongue goes. And it puts the sense in there, and they can figure out, oh, I'm following like a raccoon. Instead, they found that it's not only the Jacobson's organ that does it, but also they can see with their own eyes, again, with their eyes proper, not a secondary organ, their UVA trails too. So the chemicals in it are they like fluoresce, I guess is the best way to put it, kind of. Very similar to like an ant trail. And so they are able to actually follow that to follow a female, a receptive female. And that's how you end up with like a lot of the mating balls, is because that's a whole bunch of males who are like, we follow the same trail. How you guys doing? And then they know not to breed with each other. They're focusing on the female. That's how they know which one's the female, because looking at each other, they don't know what the difference between a male or a female is either. They have to see those cues from UVA. So it's that book is really interesting. With
Turns out her fun parts glow.
Right.
Who'd have thought?
Like bearded dragons, if you look at their fun parts, they glow too. It's the femoral pores. The femoral pores are not just waxy things that kind of look creepy as they get older. They actually do have a purpose and a function, and that is to leave a waxy secretion on just about everything they touch. And that's because it has those pheromones in it, or it has other information. And what's really cool about UV is that UVA with these animals allows them to get an accurate assessment of their partner or the other animal that's in front of them, because it doesn't lie. It's not being, they're not chemicals that can be like altered or anything like that. It gives them like a true, this is how this animal is, this is what we're doing, this is what we're looking at. So it keeps everybody a little bit more honest in the reptile world, or the animal world even, apparently. And then there's behavioral zoo book. It's the behavioral psychology or the social behavioral aspect or something like that of zoo animals. And again, I can send you the actual title because I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a newer publication. And that actually, even in there, for specifically reptiles, talks about the importance of UVA in those guys. And then, of course, UVB and things like that. So those are ones that I would recommend. If you really want to nerd out and like go all in with me, there's photobiology books, there's photochemistry books, but some of those can get like pretty like seedy and like really deep in there.
Right.
But a lot of them are like dermatology books, actually. So because there's so much focus on people now with like melanomas and things like that, that they look at what's the positive versus the negative side of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. That same thing, kind of going back to talking about it being a little more of a high level subject, is that because there isn't as much research into reptiles and they're, I always think this one is funny too, of it makes sense, right? Like, oh, why is a big chunk of herpetoculture into reptiles? Because you're alternative kids and you didn't want cats and dogs and you wanted a pet that people didn't know as much about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out people don't know as much about it. Like all of the people, even the squares who were in a science lab that you used to make fun of because you wanted an emo pet, they're not studying that. They're studying cats and dogs and cows and chickens. That's why you didn't want one. Like, so now when you need information on that animal, you're going to have to look at cats and dogs and cows and chickens, and in this case, human skin cancer, and try to figure out what that information means about your special thing, because we picked the weird thing. Like
we picked the weird thing in the weird thing in the weird thing.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a million people are one step further.
Yeah. There's a lot of it where you have to infer based off of what you're reading, and there is trial and error. And, again, with Eurymastix folks and iguana folks and chameleon folks, like a part of that is probably why some of those people are very entrenched and difficult to move to new ideas, is because trial and error for UV intensive animals or herbivores and things like that can mean you lose stuff. It scares people a little bit. And so, yeah, there's a lot more to it than I'm just going to switch light bulbs or I want to try it out or whatever.
Yeah. It's kind of being an ethnobotanist or let's try something else. An archaeologist. There we go. That one works. So an ethnobotanist, in case y'all don't know, is like looking at how plants were used and like processed and stuff like that during like a certain time period by a certain group of people. But like an archaeologist, for instance, like if we go on an archaeology dig and we're like, cool, we found this, super awesome, like Viking necklace. And we're like, yeah, it's from the Viking age. Well, okay, but it's on somebody that's clearly on a skeleton of like someone from Asian descent. Well, crap. Now what do we do? So you have to kind of extrapolate that information and say, okay, we know this. And now I have to take information from other sources about the era. So I don't have anything written on Viking jewelry, but I do have information from that time period about the Silk Road and where some of those travelers went. So I can start to infer that that's not abnormal, that somebody from there would be coming to here and might have a Viking necklace. The same kind of thing happens when we're looking for UV or information even just on care in general, but we're looking at, okay, well, this galliform or these chickens can do this, and like they respond super well to UVA. Maybe our reptiles will respond super well to UVA because it came out and was like super excited about a light bulb. So it's an interesting puzzle, and it definitely takes a special kind of nerd who likes detective work.
It takes the kind of nerd who would go from talking about a book titled Photobiology to referencing the Viking guards of Persian princes that you would find in a book called The Silk Road. That is about the development of the modern world from an Eastern historical perspective. Yeah, that kind of nerd. Actually, off of the dermatology thought process there, we did have a question about the chances of cancer and UVA exposure and things like that. So, what do you know about that with all of
So
your quizzes?
yes, I'm so impressed that you knew the Silk Road.
I love that book.
Just like super impressed. So yes, they can get cancer from UV just like any other animal can. Here's the caveat though. So their skin, their dermis especially, is actually created to take care of their UV needs. So for instance, bearded dragons, their inside cavity, so their peritoneum, the inside lining of their cavity, is actually black. And so that is not to hold heat in, because Lord knows they don't need heat being held in Australia. They got plenty to find. It's actually to protect the internal organs from excess UV lighting, whether it's A, B. They don't usually get C because that needs a solar flare. But either way, but A and B. So it protects the internal organs from having too much shined right on them. And then the way their skin is that when you look at it, like their scales are created in such a way, and the skin that covers it is created in such a way that it protects them from excess UV. So they're only getting a certain amount. They're actually filtering it themselves so that it doesn't penetrate down into the body. So they actually have that ability naturally. So they have their own natural defenses against cancer better than we do. We were not made to go and stand in the sunlight and tan. We were meant to scurry from one area to the next and to honestly be a little bit more crepuscular than we probably are. Because between like 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., when, predators are a little bit out, that's also where you have, the highest UV levels. In UVA, because UVA is what causes sunburn most of the time. And UVA will start to become the highest around like mid-morning, and then again in like the mid-afternoon realm, and it's like 300 times more prevalent than the UVB at that time. It's incredible. At noon it's only 100 times, like you get more UVB than UVA, but still, like, it's incredible how much they're exposed to and how their bodies adapted to that. So you'll see animals that are exposed more to like cyclura with that thick, it's like a rhino hide. Like if you've ever pet rhinoceros iguana, that is not like a pleasant experience. It is thick. It is, bristly, and it's got crystalline structures that help refract off some of that excess UV because it protects itself. Now, when we're talking about like silkies or leatherbacks, for bearded dragons, that those phenotypes actually do have, a greater risk of problems occurring because of UV if it's put into like the excess area. So from your standard bulb, there's very minimal chance of actually having an issue. It would be like if you're putting it like super concentrated, like 6 inches away, and you're just like cook. Like then you're going to have a problem. But other than that, you're really not going to have those issues because reptiles were actually created to utilize the sun to warm themselves. And part of that deal is that you need to protect yourselves from the secondary effects of the sun, which is the UV.
Yep.
Super long-winded way to say yes and no.
Well, and it also plays into the idea of enclosure design, coaching people on how to, is it arboreal or terrestrial? Do you have shade structures? Do you, have you separated heat and UV, timers and all these different things?
Yep.
And just the idea that it isn't a flip on the switch and flip off the switch, which, from the pet keeper's perspective, some folks I understand would either struggle with those things or it's a detractor type of thing. I think I'm weird because I came from the saltwater side of things.
You are starting out like complicated.
What? Yeah.
You already started complicated. Be like me and start with phenol.
Yeah. Well, right. Jeez. In that, I never thought it was strange to have 2, 3, 4 lights and 3 timers and and the setup for all that is usually a pain, you know.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting in your dining room and the lights cycle through your fish tank, and then it's blue, and it's like, oh yeah, it's 7:30, and then like it's not weird, it just goes like that, because for the same idea of looking at that art on the wall, as you go snorkeling and you look under it and it's like, oh, really bright, everything's blue green, then it's dark, and then like you could just see it, you know. And then we were just trying to fake that, and then now it probably does get a little weird for people with the idea of visible spectrum things, and then struggling with exposures for that type of stuff. I could definitely see where folks would have issues with that, of trying to, because if you were a dart frog nerd and you had your beautiful jungle wall and you cycled through that, that's just visible plant light. It's, and that makes sense to you, you know, and you already know that you're thinking temperate. You're not concerned about heat. We're under the jungle canopy structure. We're out of the brights. Like your brain is already going that way.
Yep.
And then you have somebody that's like, well, actually it refracts through some stuff and there are breaks in the leaves and they'll seek those out. And if you put this little spotlight here, your frogs will go to it, I promise, you know, and until you do it, and then you're like, oh, first call, like literally they go to it and get excited for the day and then chirp out for their girlfriends because they know it's daytime, and like literally, you know, until you've experienced it, it is a little bit of the unknown, and it just doesn't jive with what you can see in a lot of the historical experience of blasting monitors. I need to figure out. Yeah. Well, you know, I need to figure out a way to. I'm going to post some pictures tomorrow, probably on Lizard Brain and Coal Black, and I'll show folks. I have one of your bulbs over a plain old Niger Uromastix orange male, and I've separated heat and UV, and he's a boy, so bright orange belly, and you know, kind of dingy back, and I'll show the before and after. I literally just did a Boy Scout show today, and I had the lizard out. He was just chilling, and then Indy walked around with him, and I walked around with my cell phone showing a picture of what he looks like fired up to all the kids. It's a paint orange, like absurd lizard. Like he was like, it's springtime and ladies, and just like orange.
I'm here,
dude. And you can I hate that it's so difficult to show those things. Like he literally walks over and he's like, oh, UV. I'm starting to like energize. Uromastix like energize with color. And then he scoots over and starts to heat up, and it gets more orange. And then he goes back and he's like, uh-huh. And then he sits in the heat and he turns bright. It's like a freaking Super Saiyan. He turns bright orange, and then he goes and eats some stuff, and then he's just walking around like, where's the chicks at? Where are the chick? Like, you can watch a lizard power up under lights and heat like a freaking Matchbox car. Like, it's, I don't know. It's so crazy that I guess if you are a pet keeper or a single, individual animal or single species, you may not have had the experience. And so I understand that, we have very diverse collections, obviously, so our experiences are a little different. But man, I watched a Uromastix power up today. Like it was the craziest thing. And I've seen a rhinoceros iguana wake up, got the blue on the sides, going to show off for the chicks, the UV powers up, and that sucker gets dark. Like he gets dark, sits in it for a while, goes and eats and does some stuff, and then does his iguana things. Blue and silver for the ladies, goes back, and you can see this animal alter its appearance based on the light it's exposed to. And I know that because that thing only has plant lights and a deep heat projector. Other than that, it's got a UV spotlight. It doesn't have a blasting heat lamp like the Uromastix. So I know where the changes are coming from. I don't know. Like, to me, it's such a no-brainer to be like, shoot the lasers at all of them. It's so good. Like,
You can't see the lasers, but they're there. I promise. They will show you that they're
there. And people hear me talk about it. Like, my green iguana, he's between 4 and 5 feet. He's an adult male. Came through the rescue route, so not like gigantic, but he's adult size. Mm-hmm. His enclosure is 7 long. It's, I think, technically 6 tall, but I have a ridiculous substrate in it, so like my kids can stand in it still, so it's plenty tall.
Which kid, though? That's kind of the question.
Not Walter, the other two.
Okay.
There will be pictures floating around on the internet today. I had somebody else's kids in my shop, and their kids climbed in there to sit with the iguana also. It's a big box for a lizard. But it's the same way. I've separated heat and UV. You can watch them seek these things out. And with all iguanids and most agamids as well, they follow, they put the front of the head, they get the center of the head there to figure out where they want their body to be situated. And especially for iguanids, because they're trying to use the dewlap and trying to visually, display and how they interact with the world. They lead with their head and really show that off. And you can watch that happen in real time and know that it's happening, because above that thing is like almost 7 foot 5-strip LED plant light that's absurd. And
that's a lot.
He could care less. Like, he just wanders around and does iguana stuff. And then that light comes on and he shoves his head under it. Mm-hmm. Hangs out for however long he hangs out. And then usually dive bombs off of it because he's trying to get to people. But goes and does iguana things. I have had so many like tangible real world experiences with animals that need and seek UV. Like, I don't know. That's my pitch for they work, I guess. Like,
And you need that UVA, so that's actually the driving factor for a lot of the basking. Some reptiles can see UVB, or they can sense it. There's different theories on it. For like instance, green anoles actually have like D-target cells in their head. It's actually in their brain. They have like these little target cells in their brain that says that's a good UV spot so that I can get vitamin D going. That's amazing. They haven't proven that out in other animals. I don't know why they haven't proven it out in like bearded dragons, since their brains are larger and probably easier to dissect, but neither here nor there. I'm not the researcher. But there is evidence that they do use their like parietal eye, like you said, with the hood like straight out and stuff like that, but they can't see with their eyes proper. So each reptile species has its own like adaptive way of finding UV, but they all look for it. It's just a matter of what's causing it. Like in sea snakes, they're not really searching it out so much as they have some along like their tail. They have like these receptors, the photoreceptors along their tail. And part of that, so they can tell if like their ass is sticking out of the water. Like, that's a bad thing for a sea snake. But part of it is also so that they can come up, they can tell how much UV they've got, and they can go back down so that they're not, exposing themselves. And then other ones have it along their body. So it's really interesting how animals actually adapt to find that UV and then how they bask with it. Like, you'll actually see different behaviors if you use like the two sides. You'll see different behaviors in their basking too.
For sure. So in the chat, we had a question, and Ryan is lurking and answered, so I'm going to read that out for folks. It said, what is the impact of enclosure tops on UV light, glass, plastic screen, the variety of things that are available to folks? And Ryan's answer was UV is blocked by glass and plastic and can be reduced 15 to 55% by screen, obviously depending on size of screen and how much penetration you're going to get if you're using chicken wire or if you're using, mesh. Those things are going to change. I will say, Wally asked that and said, prefaced it with, unless you've already talked about this. And then Ryan said they didn't talk about it. And to give
Ryan.
to give Erica the plug, we did. And she split the middle between 15 and 55%. Erica went with 30. So obviously her preferred
most of them are 30.
Her preferred screen size is middle of the road. She's not a chicken wire or a mesh lady.
I'm not a size.
She's a 30% lady. So yeah, yes, but the big thing being glass, plastic, the plexi tops, depending on your enclosure style, that absolutely is something that you need to account for if your lighting system is outside of your enclosure, which again is kind of one of the benefits to. Yes, no, Ryan, you missed it. Your wife's on it. She knows what she's talking about. Again, going with enclosure design and placement and these things, and whether or not your lighting rig is going to be exterior, if you're going to, split the difference, and maybe your heat's exterior and UVs and however you want to play that out. Again, a lot of those things are maybe a little higher level concept, more on the next level of keeping an enclosure design and things like that. But yeah, it's
really quick. There is glass on our bulbs. If you look, there is glass. Please don't remove the glass. It's actually really important to spread out your lighting and everything like that. And it's a special quartz glass. So it's meant for UVB to come through it and all the UVA. Please don't remove it. It's really not good for the bulb. And again, it's meant to come through because there's two different types of glasses that can actually go through, but none of your tanks are going to be made out of that.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, I always have people.
No, and like I said, that it's so weird how different hobbies, because again, if you're in the saltwater hobby, it's like, oh, are you a metal halide guy or a UV guy? Or not UV, I'm sorry, a LED guy. Are you, do you like this pump or that pump? Or, and you have camps and people's preferences in all pets, hobbies or what have you. But same way, like, well, if you're going to be a metal halide person, then you need this. If you're going to be this person, then, to know it's this glass, not that glass, and it's this plastic, just the different nuances and things where in some hobbies that's old hat. If you're a fish person, you're expected to know these things, right? Because you're supposed to know. You didn't read the fish book to know the fish thing, and then it's there's these base levels of where hobbies are going, and at least on the lighting side or the full spectrum lighting side, we're really like kind of playing catch up. That's a very interesting idea. Thank you for asking that, Wally. So we are actually over 2 hours. Holy crap.
And that's without Ryan, I would like to point out.
It is. And this was, more emotional, squishy talk and less math and engineering. That's fine. Went Silk Road and books and whatnot.
I'll get a protractor out next time and some engineering formulas that I Googled really quick.
No, because neither of us is going to know what we're talking about then. That's not going to work.
Make it sound nerdy. True.
Before I let you go, what is going on for Tinley Park? What's the plan? What are we doing? What's the haps?
We will be there. We will be there at Tinley, and it will be absolutely amazing. We will have all of our bulbs, so excited! And then we're also going to have the Smart Tech, and our new snake bags, which are amazing. So we rounded the corners of the snake bags. We actually had them tucked in so that they don't have like that little corner that they can keep pushing like their snout into.
Okay.
And then we made the nylon cords thinner and longer, so that you could tie it around more, because some people like to tie it one way, some people like to tie it another way. I did not know that there were camps on how to properly tie a snake bag. Good gravy, there are.
Question before you continue with your NARBC talk. were those ideas birthed from your other hobbies that involve bags and dice and things of carrying all sorts of bags?
little bit.
Did you make a dice bag for snakes? Did you make a D20 bag for snakes? Is that what
It
happened?
is. If you actually look at it, it looks just like a D20 bag.
Erica's a D&D nerd. All right.
I am. My preferred class is necromancer. Thank you very much. So we do have animal dice bags, and we've reinforced and made the loop on the side larger and heavier duty. So, like, you're gonna get some when you come to Tinley, and I want you to like beat the tar out of them, basically. So
that's a thing because I currently have a very large bull snake that obviously has a Pituophis face and has figured out that she can push her butt along the knot, because I zip and knot my bags currently, and she can push her butt on that end and her face in the corner, and she's a pretty big snake, so she goes in other containers now because she has figured that out. So yeah,
she's sitting there. She's like, I can get my tail through this air hole and unlock the.
Yep. She's a box snake now instead of a bag snake. So we'll test that out. Yeah.
Nope. We'll send you the big ones, and then they still all come with the Velcro straps too,
which are super helpful. Yeah, big time. Especially if you're bagging lizards. That's a big thing. The
and they're really nice. You have to like, move something, and you're like, oh god, how do I do this? Ooh, like this is really nice. So because they're not like pinky, they're pretty long. So we'll be bringing those, and then all of our swivel mounts. So we have a whole bunch of swivel mounts that can be put into your enclosure because people are having a hard time finding reliable mounts to put in their enclosure. And we test them out in our our spiny neck mangrove monitor enclosures. They hang on them like full weight. They use them as ropes to basically swing on. We also use them in our higher humidity enclosures, so like our Amazon tree boa enclosures, and we haven't had any issues with them, with the humidity and stuff like that. So they're a great product for those guys. We don't have any more of the cages because we are actually working with a new prototype that's coming out. And then I'm so sorry, I get asked this all the time. I will not have UV meters. But I promise you, when our new UV meter comes out, you are going to all plots. It will be amazing. So that's what we got.
Very cool. Awesome. Glad to hear it. It was cool. Where can folks find Vivtech products?
You can find us at vivtechproducts.com. You can also find us at Vivtech Products on Instagram and Facebook. And then if you're on TikTok, it has to be like the real Vivtech Products because there was somebody else that already tried to use Vivtech Products. Not entirely sure who it is or why, but it's there. So it's the real, and it's the _ Vivtech Products. So you'll have to find it that way. But right now, we're most active on Instagram and Facebook. Honestly, Instagram is probably where we post the most, and then Facebook kind of gets like the secondary. Send it there. It's fine.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of trending that way.
It's people because people can choose to find you, like you had talked about before, Bill, on one of our podcasts way back yonder. You can curate your feed easier with Instagram. So we're finding that people who are finding us through Instagram want to find us and are interested in it, as opposed to, being put onto Facebook and then you're hoping somebody finds you, but there's just so much on there. So.
Right. Yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat, trending that way myself.
Yeah. I didn't think I would be that person. I am that person now. I'm like over there.
Yeah. And it is getting harder and harder with the whole Facebook group, social media, all that. And I think I'm older than I want to be. Just
the same age, you butt. Can we not say that?
Well, there's some whiteness.
There's some grays in here. I just use dye.
Whatever. Nice.
Yeah. So.
Cool. Yeah. yeah, my plug for NARBC and going to hang out with the Vivtech folks and see their stuff. I don't know, man. I think that experience is very different. I think that the buying experience with that is very different. Um, it should make sense to folks who are in herpetoculture because that experience is very different when you're getting animals, and so it makes sense that that experience is very similar when you're getting equipment. Or at least it makes sense to me. Yeah, man, go try to break
It's
their stuff
created
and
by
plug
an
it in.
engineer and a reptile medicine nerd. It doesn't get
Yeah,
much better.
yeah, I'm all about it, man. I use it in a lot of stuff, and I'm continually adding it to more stuff. So
Mhm.
I'll keep posting pictures.
And I will start tagging you on everything. Be like, and Bill.
For sure. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, it was fun. I don't know how to get out of this though.
All right. We'll see you. Awesome. That was episode 50. I'm really glad Erica came on. Glad Ryan got to come into the chat and talk to folks, answer some questions. That was cool. Really appreciate it. Hope all the family stuff on that end is going well. As always, if I can point accurately, black box cages. I am using Vivtech products inside black box cages, so that's kind of cool. They continue to make cool stuff. They are always progressing. I really enjoy the things I have from them. I have more stuff on the way from them, so I'll have more videos up about black box in the future. And the black box I have coming here actually pretty quickly is coming flat packed. So I'm going to do some videos showing how they're packaged, how they are shipped, showing construction and things like that. So you guys can see a little bit more of that. And the ones that are coming are set up for heat and UV separately, like I just talked about in this episode, with a full spectrum plant light. And so I'll show you guys what I have planned for that. The UV in those will be Vivtech products plugged into Arcadia lamp holders. And then the rest of the lighting and the deep heat projector will be from Arcadia. And so you guys will be able to see what it is we were talking about there with the animal being able to choose and things like that. And I'll show you how I measure and make my choices on those things because the different enclosures will have actually maybe all of their different types of lights, because I have a tropical animal, one savanna animal. I have an animal that is from a temperate climate, and I have one desert. So I should be able to use their whole spectrum of bulbs actually to be able to show you guys some of the choices that I make there as far as shade structures and the animal having access to UV as well as heat using the DP projector instead of the light bulbs. So that'll be pretty cool. So keep an eye out for that. I have guests lined up all the way until, the middle of May. So that's cool. I have quite a diversity of guests going into the year. I've talked about that a couple of times now. Different subjects, different parts of herpetoculture, people with some different experiences. That should be pretty cool. Obviously, all centered around herpetoculture and lizards in general. To me, when I think about UV, I automatically go to lizards. I do use it on snakes as well, but I know a lot of folks come to the UV conversation from iguanas, chameleons, uromastyx, these much more UV and light intensive animals. And we just typically equate that with lizards, although I do use it in snakes. So I hope that those of you who came this route, who are interested in lizards primarily, got something out of that. I know that the vast majority of the commonly kept lizard species do have some serious UV needs. And that's always kind of kept us behind the curve compared to snake keepers, because they don't always go that route. And a lot of our popular animals are herbivores, and then they really need it. And so we've had some pretty stark differences between lizards and snakes there, specifically centered on UV and light. So that could have played in for a lot of people. So as always, I will see you guys again in 2 weeks. Later.